Good morning, almost 1:30 Tuesday morning on Talk Radio. Me, Darryl Morris, thank you so much for having us on this morning. That's one of those stories that I'm going to be honest with you, I saw and I thought we're going to have this conversation on the show today, and I don't know how passionately I'm going to be able to support it this time around. Extinction Rebellion have revealed a date of their next mass rebellion, which is expected to bring chaos to London, if some publications are to be believed today, with a series of non-violent protests. Cards on the table. You know how I feel about this. I'm deeply passionate about two things. Number one, our right to protest. And number two, our need to do something about the climate emergency, right? Those are two mountains on which I am very, very willing to die. And even I saw this protest plan and I thought, I'm going to have to go out there and bat for it again. I'm going to have to go out there and people are going to get riled up and maybe, just maybe, we will contribute to a loss of support on this. They're going to take to the streets on the 23rd of May and call for action to tackle the climate crisis. The day also marks the start of the bank holiday weekend and coincides with the FA Cup final at Wembley as well. So there's going to be lots of disruption to football fans. By the looks of it. Let's speak to somebody on this one then. Clare Farrell is a spokesperson from Extinction Rebellion and one of the co-founders and joins you now. Clare, hi there.
Hi, how you doing?
Very well, thank you. What can you tell us about the protests, Clare, and what they will involve?
Well, at the moment, we're working towards co-creating the strategy. So what we've managed to put down so far is some dates and some overarching sort of vision for how things should change going into this year. Everything's not completely finalised. There's a lot of work to do to get, loads of more input, I guess, to make the decisions about what it looks and feels like. But it's an exciting moment because we've been doing a lot of data gathering, looking at the coverage, looking at the information that we've got from the last year. You might know we've been named as a number one influencer on this issue, which has come around very fast for us. Because we haven't really been around that long. So it's an exciting time to look at how we can continue to shift the conversation.
What did that find? I'm assuming here that you've received data as well on people, how people perceive you and how well the protests went down in the eyes of the general public last year. What did that come back with?
Well, it's interesting because I think, for our movement, April felt beautiful and creative and sunny, and everything was new, and we were much more well received than I think a lot of us were expecting at that time. And then when we went out in October, of course, it was dark, it was cold, it was rainy. The police tried to move people much more quickly, and they put down the sections, the public order sections and stuff. So things changed quite a lot, and it felt quite a lot tougher on the street. But the data shows us that, for example, in October, we got 4 times as much media coverage. So I think that's really crucial to note that whatever happened here in London, then also it was happening in so many more places in the world, Sure. So October was quite a big expansion in terms of the global movement, which is really exciting.
Well, your aim is to get action from governments and from corporations, isn't it? And isn't it the case that actually this particular weekend, if we look ahead to May this year, bank holiday weekend, FA Cup final weekend at Wembley Stadium in London, so corporate organisations are likely to be closed for the bank holiday. The government doesn't sit on the bank holiday around that weekend. I think there'll be a recess for a couple of days. Ordinary football fans paying a lot of money to go and travel to watch their team play after, a hard couple of months at work and recovering from Christmas and all that sort of stuff. Those corporate organisations and the government are not going to be in town, Clare, but it's ordinary people going about their bank holiday weekend and watching the football that are going to be disproportionately affected.
Yeah, well, there's been a lot of consideration on the disruption to ordinary people and thinking about how to do things which cause a necessary disruption in terms of getting some impact for us, but also things which can be more vision holding, things that can present more of a picture of living the change that we want to see. A lot of focus at the moment, people are talking about how to just stop the harm. The government are forcing through loads and loads of things that could just stop, like aviation expansion. It's going to make everything worse. There's only over 22 airports that are going to expand in the UK. the expansion of a coal mine. There's HS2. There's all kinds of projects going on which are consistently making this worse. So there's an aim to vision something much more regenerative, but also to focus on sort of recognising that first you need to stop doing harm before you start doing repair. And so I'm hoping that's going to come through as we sort of co-create what the next phase looks like.
OK, so we've also seen our police force in London this weekend tackling a terror event in Streatham in the city. Many are going to draw the two together and wonder, Claire, aren't they, if this is the best use of resources, particularly as we find out the cost of policing the protests was in the region of about 40 million last year.
Yeah, well, and I think that's a perfectly valid question for people to ask, because we could have spent £40 million on trying to make the situation better, when in fact we know that our government is spending massive amounts of public money subsidising the fossil fuel industry, planning to do these projects which are actively harming our environment and making the situation worse for us.
But that wouldn't, even if I mean, they have put a lot of money, whether it's symbolic or otherwise, or enough or not, they have committed money to the causes of tackling climate change. We can debate whether or not that's going to the right places, or, as I say, it's enough. Had they done that, I mean, I don't know, I can't think off the top of my head to the exact figure of it, but it's probably not far out of the region of about 40 million quid. In reality, that's not going to change your decision to cause this disruption, is it?
Well, no, it's not, because we don't see any credible plan for either mitigation of the worst effects or adaptation to the impacts that we're committed to. I mean, there's a village in Wales that's being decommissioned by 2025. That's because people won't be able to live there because the sea level's going to rise. Those people are already working out that they've got to move. They won't be able to live where they are. They're going to lose their property. People all around the coast of this country are going to start to lose their property. The future is uninsurable, according to Christiana Figueres, who helped to push through the Paris Climate Agreement at 1.5 degrees of warming. And some scientists think we could breach that limit this decade. So you're talking about a future which is near term being described as world experts as uninsurable. So we're not in a safe position, and it's going to require massive change.
Sure, okay.
So that's really why we're still doing this, because the future's not safe for us.
Sure,
I hear that. Not safe for our kids.
I hear the point. I do wonder, though, if that puts to rest people's concerns about that amount of money that's being used to facilitate the protests. But let's just hone in, Claire, slightly, if we can, on Scotland Yard, who imposed a London-wide ban last year, as you mentioned. That was later overturned. It was regarded as an abuse of power. A great victory for you and your movement. How badly has that damaged relationships, though, between Extinction Rebellion and the police?
Well, it's very hard to say. There's several police officers who are working with XR, which you might know, who are not working as police officers anymore, but were senior members of staff. And I think that a lot of people right now are rightly concerned about the question over whether the police need stronger powers in order to deal with peaceful protest. It's really, really hard to say. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, we still have the same very respectful, polite relationship with the police. But obviously, when you look at the upper end of the police force, the people who are trying to push to change the rules, those people often seem to have fairly different attitude towards us to the guys that we meet on the ground, who are largely very sympathetic and very supportive. And I think a lot of them being told regularly by their children that they don't think they should police the protests at all because their kids are scared.
OK, moving up the pecking order there as well, Priti Patel, the Home Secretary, defended your inclusion on a list of terror threats. It was widely criticised, this, and she was widely criticised for doing so. But it does show what regard the government holds your movement, right? I mean, you are, so far as Priti Patel is concerned, legitimate in being included on a list of terror threats. Are you expecting a pushback from either the government or Scotland Yard between now and that May bank holiday?
Well, I think we have to expect more pressure to come from that side. It's the old Gandhian saying, isn't it? First they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, and then you win. or then at the end, hopefully you win and they join you. So, you know, things getting tougher. I think the movement has to expect that because, I mean, people in positions of power are not going to change without a bit of a push, you know, and that's what Extinction Rebellion has been set up to try and facilitate.
But is that the right thing to do? I mean, to have your relationship with the Home Secretary Priti Patel, rather than it being constructive, rather than her inviting you in to talk about how the two of you can work together, she's put you legitimately on the terror threats list. Doesn't sound like a great relationship, does it?
Well, I think the problem here is that, you know, that came through the Prevent programme, which is controversial within the police force itself, as far as I'm aware. It's caused a great deal of distress for many different communities who've been implicated by that programme, who've not been helped by it.
Maybe, but she could have dismissed it, couldn't she? And she didn't. She did say in the cold, hard light of day, she said that actually there was some reason, there was a legitimate reason for you to be included on a terror threat. And I'm thinking less about the process and more really about your relationship with government. These people who you are trying to convince. Any change, Claire, as you well know, is a battle for hearts and minds, isn't it? You need to win these people over, not clash with them. And all I see at the moment is clashes with the police, clashes with the public, and clashes clearly with the government that you are trying to get into action.
Well, I don't know if I agree, actually. I mean, post-April, I was one of the delegates who went to have a meeting with Michael Gove. We went and met the government on that occasion. We had a conversation with them. We asked them to declare state of emergency. And shortly after that, there was a motion raised, and everybody in Westminster backed it. So, you know, we have had some successful interaction with the government. We have a different government now, different Prime Minister, a different cabinet. Things look quite different. And so, you know, who knows where this is going to go. But the first thing about having a good relationship with these people is to be respectful to them. I think that putting us on a terror list is utterly disrespectful because they know fine well that we've proven our non-violent discipline and that we are peaceful people who are really, really well-meaning and only want to see a safe future. So for me, there's a lack of respect on their side, not ours.
Okay.
And the door's always open. We'll always talk to anybody who's willing to, and we'll always do it with respect. So they know that deep down. And, you know, I mean, Stanley Johnson comes out on our protest. So the Prime Minister's dad is flashing his phone around with an XR sticker on the back of it. So,
yeah. Well,
I think it's not quite as clean.
No, it's not. But I think we've seen plenty of occasions and issues on which the Johnson family have not agreed over the last few years. So that might not necessarily make much of a difference. You've been seeking donations. I think if reports are to be believed, somewhere in the region of £1 million has been donated already. What do you know of the people that have donated money? Who are they?
Well, as far as I know, the majority of people who've donated to us have been individuals. Of course, we've had some bigger donations from some other sources, including a few musicians. There was a big donation from Radiohead before. Michael Stipes just recently said he was going to give us some money, and I think there'll be more musicians lining up to do that. And aside from that, there's some foundations, I think, that have given us some funding. I'm not on the fundraising team, so I don't know every single detail, I'm afraid, to tell you about who's given us money. But the majority of it has come through crowdfund, I believe.
And do you feel comfortable with that? Do you feel like everything's kind of above board and you don't have any queries about the individuals or the corporations that are backing you?
Well, I don't actually know that there are any corporations that I would describe as backing us. To my knowledge, the financial system we've got in place is fully transparent. So we show where our money goes, where it comes from, as far as I'm aware, and you should be able to link to that information through our website if you want to look at it.
Okay, is there anything in your mind, as somebody who feels really, really passionate, Claire, and just finally on this point, but somebody who feels really passionate, cares so deeply about the cause, do you feel any sense of doubt at all as we head into this next round of action, that it's perhaps not the best course?
I think the problem is that there's no other plan. if somebody has a better plan, I would do it immediately. But at the moment, as I say, we're on course to lose the Arctic very soon and see very, very rapid warming. We know that there'll be a cascade of events after that occurs where we're going to see sea levels rise. We're going to see mass food shortages, I would expect, within our lifetimes because of crop failure. Scientists recently have said that South Africa and Australia have entered a state now of permanent drought, and that they'll be surprised if it ever turns around. I got a message pre the COP in Madrid from somebody in South Africa saying that there were adults drinking out of animal troughs, and people were shooting each other over water supplies. And the lived reality of this is absolutely devastating. It's heartbreaking to look at around the world. And all of the impacts that people are feeling now are going to just continue to worsen and spread all over the whole planet. And so there's just, if there was another way to get this change to happen, then I would love to do something that was easier,
Sure.
But it's just no one's doing anything. Carbon emissions went up again last year. They'll go up again this year. The trajectory is completely the opposite to what we need to be on. And I don't know how I can sit back and live my life watching this unfold while life on Earth is destroyed. I can't live with it.
Sure. So, Claire, listen, we're out of time, but nice to catch up. We'll do it again before May, I suspect.
Lovely, thank you.
Clare Farrell from Extinction Rebellion. Your take on that is always welcome. 0344 499 1000. I know you've got one.